you, Laska Hurley, and I too would like to welcome Minister Lynch back to the House this afternoon. I think that I would like to add my support for the bill, and I welcome the visitors in the gallery, and thank you for coming this afternoon. The phrase human trafficking is one which evokes a feeling of horror and revulsion in most people. Trafficking causes unimaginable misery and suffering to those who are dehumanised, forced to become commodities that are bought, sold, used and abused. The idea that human beings can be exploited and used for financial gain or kept in virtual slavery sounds like it should belong in another era, but unfortunately that's not the case. It's difficult to estimate with accuracy the numbers of people being trafficked into and within Ireland for the purposes of labour or sexual exploitation, as unfortunately, as we well know, the majority of cases do not come to the attention of the authorities. However, from the reports of the Migrant Rights Centre, it would appear that forced labour is a growing problem, as Senator Keane already outlined, with them dealing with over 180 cases in the last 6 years. This bill defines what is meant by forced labour, with the definition based on the International Labour Organisation's definition of forced labour as all works or service which is exacted from any person under the menace of any penalty and for which the person has not offered himself or herself voluntarily. This bill is necessary to copperfasten the measures which are already in place to combat and prevent trafficking in human beings and to bring us in line with the EU directive which was adopted in April 2011. As it stands, Ireland far exceeds the terms of the directive regarding the level of sanctions which can be imposed on a person found guilty of human trafficking for the purposes of sexual exploitation, labour exploitation or exploitation for the removal of organs. Such a person is liable to life imprisonment. This bill extends the scope of our human trafficking legislation to include exploitation for forced begging and exploitation for criminal activities. The problem of forced begging is widespread throughout the EU, with figures for 2010 stating that some 14% of those trafficked in the EU were forced into labour, while 3% were made to beg on the streets and 1% were in domestic servitude. I'm sure we've all witnessed the scene many times on our streets, where very often it's a young woman that we see with a baby in her arms that will be sitting in the cold and begging. The awful truth is that this woman may be in the control of a person who is forcing her to beg and hand up any money she gets or face the consequences. And the amendment will provide that anyone who forces a person to beg is subjecting them to forced labour and will be penalised for this. And this, I think, is very welcome. The definition of exploitation in the EU directive also includes exploitation for criminal activities. This could include pickpocketing, shoplifting or drug trafficking. There's been widespread coverage in the media recently of the rise of so-called cannabis grow houses across the country, where large volumes of cannabis have been found in various locations, often in isolated houses or sheds, which have been set up with heating and irrigation systems to produce huge amounts of cannabis plants. It has emerged that often these grow houses are being worked by people who have been trafficked into Ireland by criminal gangs and forced to work in appalling condition. The Migrant Rights Centre has reported that children and adults are trafficked across Europe for forced labour in these cannabis factories. They are moved usually by criminal networks across borders or within countries, often being forced to live as well as work in the grow houses. The use of physical violence or threats of violence are common in order to ensure compliance and to prevent the victim from attempting to escape. Apart from addressing these issues through legislation, there is also a need to raise awareness for the problem of human trafficking among the general public. People have to realise that suspicions of human trafficking should be reported to the authorities, or else the victims may continue to be exploited in the most inhumane way, powerless to extract themselves from lives of misery and danger. And I'd just like to mention something that I came across in my research on the Blue Blindfold Anti-Human Trafficking campaign, which was launched in 2008 in conjunction with the Department of Justice, Gardaí and the Crime Stoppers, which has an excellent website with advice for, and help for anyone with concerns about human trafficking. So just in conclusion, Laska Hurley, I again would like to welcome welcome the bill, but there are areas, like my colleagues, that I feel that have to be, that have to be examined further. And specifically, I think Senator Van Turnhout mentioned the area of people with special needs. And I think that is something that the Immigrant Council of Ireland have, sent details to us, which I'm sure you have as well. Also, I think the secondary victimisation, I think, is there's another area that needs to be looked at, where people are kind of constantly made relate and tell their story over and over again. And I think this is something that we need to have in place, that people are not subjected to the ordeal, relating the tale over and over. So I'd just like to conclude with that. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Senator Moran. Senator